Hello, my name is Austin, and things are getting spicy in the housing market. Controversially wrong, Jim Cramer is concerned about the housing market. Young adults are taking longer to reach financial independence, and U.S. home prices have fallen by the most in 11 years. So today, in this video, I'm going to take a look at the housing market, how it's getting beat up, and how the perfect storm is brewing for a housing crash, and then what it could mean for you and how to get rich from it. Now, as someone who doesn't own a house, this is actually very exciting, but if you already own a home, this can be concerning, considering 45% of home sellers that believe we are in a housing bubble. And what's not in a bubble is my very small YouTube channel, so if you could do me a big favor and give the video a like, that would really help me out. So we have to begin with the most obvious part of the housing market, and that's pricing. Home prices are actually down 1.7%, and the median price of homes is $388,000, and I sure do miss when houses were $200,000. But 1.7% down isn't turning the housing market upside down, and we have to dig a little bit deeper because if you look at only the prices, well then, I hate to say it, but you're gonna be behind the curve and you'll be too late. Total mortgage application volume dropped by 4.6% last week, and compared to last year, the amount of people applying for a mortgage is down 30%. So we have to ask why. Why does no one want to buy a home? In fact, I know tons of people that want to buy a home, so why are prices going down? It's not that no one can afford to buy a house right now. Well, that's kind of the case. It's more of a part that no one can afford to sell their house right now. Like this homeowner said, I can't afford to sell because I don't want to lose that rate. And the problem is if they sold their house right now, they would be giving up that amazing 2 or 3% mortgage rate, and they'd be trading up for something at today's current rate, which is around 7%. And this scenario is true for nearly 2/3 of Americans, with a majority of Americans having a 30-year fixed rate mortgage between 2.5% and 4%. The thought process is, wow, my interest rate is so good. Why would I ever go for a loan that is nearly triple the interest rate, most likely resulting in me having less buying power than I started with? So if no one can sell their home and buy something new, what will happen? Well, something similar to this has already happened to the United States. So I want to take you back to 2006 when Steve Jobs first introduced the iPhone. In 2005 and 2006, the Federal Reserve interest rate was 5.25%. because they were fighting a higher than expected inflation nearing around 4%. And I know that's nothing compared to what we were at 9.1% we saw a few years ago, but it's important to know how both scenarios got into this position. In order to fight inflation, the goal of 2%, the Fed has increased the interest rates all the way to 5.25%. which in turn has made mortgage rates go up as well. Think of mortgage companies taking the Fed rate, in this case 5.25%, and adding just a little bit on top for profit. But what's interesting, as we sit in 2023, we have just now hit the same interest rates as we did in 2005 of 5.25%. And now, just like in 2006, mortgage rates have actually hit around 7%. This is actually significant. Like we talked about before, mortgage rates are actually deterring people from buying houses because no one would want to buy a new home, pay all that money to interest, but at the same time, no one wants to sell their homes because sellers would lose so much of their buying power. So now we're in this weird area where both parties can't afford to buy or sell. And if you talk to a real estate agent who doesn't really understand economics, they're probably going to tell you that there's a supply shortage. And really, agents just say this because it's hard to find homes right now to sell. So in a way, they're right, but they're also wrong. See, a way that supply is measured on the housing market is something called a month supply of homes. And the month supply of homes refers to the number of months it would take to sell the current inventory of homes at the current sales pace. Essentially, this is a way of taking into account the volume of homes sold as well. This really shows us a bigger picture. It shows us demand, inventory, and how willing buyers and sellers are on closing a home. The biggest culprit here, though, is volume. Even if people wanted to buy, no one wants to sell. So this is the same situation that played out in 2006 when mortgage rates were also very high. So currently we're sitting at around an 8 to 9 month supply, but before the great housing crash of 2008, the supply was also 8 to 9 months. But in my book, the volume is a huge risk because it opens up the door to huge price swings like we saw back in 2008. But let me explain why. Let's say my little craft project represents a balanced housing market with equal number of buyers and sellers, meaning the price over here stays the same. But if we take out a bunch of sellers, we take out a bunch of buyers because we have a low housing market and with low volume, now this seller can't find a buyer at this price because his house is too expensive, so he has to bring his price all the way down here before he can find the next buyer. So essentially this low volume could bring huge price swings if sellers have to come all the way down in price just to find a new buyer. See, this lack of buyers and sellers, it really opens up the door to large price swings, but this is one of the factors that caused the crash of 2008, but low volume on its own doesn't cause drops in price. It actually doesn't do anything to price. It needs a catalyst. Well, I'm sure you're very well of the subprime mortgage crisis, but for those who don't know, this was the catalyst that led to the downfall of the 2008 housing market. Subprime mortgages were basically mortgages given to people who couldn't afford loans. Banks were actually giving mortgages to people who had credit scores of around 580 to 620, and at that time, 21% of all mortgages were considered subprime. Well, when interest rates started going up and living costs started rising in 2008, the people who had these subprime loans couldn't afford to keep their houses, and they eventually were going to be part of the 6 million homes that went into foreclosure. So in 2008, we were in a similar position as we are right now, but it took a catalyst of the subprime mortgages to bring the whole market down. So what could be the catalyst right now? After all, we're in a very unique market with people saying that the recent banking crisis echoes 2008, but luxury home builders are posting record profits, and now homeowners with good credit scores are subsidizing fees for those with bad credit scores. Now, I'm not sure what the catalyst could be, or even if there will be a catalyst, but I do know mortgage rates possibly reaching 8% will make people hesitant to buy or sell their house. The first logical catalyst could be the continuation of the banking crisis. So if you've been living under a rock, this year 3 large banks, including SVB, First Republic, and Signature Bank, have failed. And when these banks fail, it causes panic and it causes people to do some wild things. And these bank failures were the catalyst that caused the Great Depression. Well, a recent study found that there are currently 186 banks that could face the same fate of insolvency if the depositors were to withdraw their funds. And with the current low volume in real estate right now, more bank failures could be the catalyst that brings down the whole market. But maybe people are wrong. Maybe 186 insolvent banks is nothing to be worried about. So let's take a look at a different catalyst: jobs. And jobs are very important because if people don't make any money, if people don't have their job, they can't pay their bills, and then foreclosures go up, flooding the market with a supply of homes. I'm sure you've heard of the recent layoffs, and thousands of people have been getting laid off, but it's particularly in the tech industry. But remember all those debt ceiling talks that we've been hearing over the last 3 months? Well, there's an interesting scenario that economists are talking about. Moody's economists predict that a brief breach of the debt ceiling would result in 1.5 million jobs lost, but economists at the White House predict that 8 million jobs could be lost if the US defaults on our debt, and that default date is very close at June 1st. So a debt default would put millions of people out of work, possibly putting tons of pressure on the housing market, and very, very easily could lead to a potential collapse since we are on such a fragile position as we were back in 2008. This is usually the part of the video where I say, hey, everyone's exaggerating this to you. I wouldn't worry about it. It won't happen to you. But I can't help get this feeling that we're slowly building up to the cliff, or at least a substantial downturn. It's hard to tell, and I don't know, but evidence looks fairly compelling. I give the crash like a 50-50 chance, but what I will say is in 2024 now looks to be a better time to buy houses where housing is going to be more affordable. I don't know if we will or won't crash, but I do think housing prices have more to come down at least. But like I said at the beginning of the video, I think there will be some great opportunities to make some possibly generational wealth, and that personally gets me really excited. Warren Buffett famously said, "The stock market is a device transferring money from the impatient to the patient." And replacing those words with housing market will make this a very accurate quote. Since 2008, housing prices have actually increased well over 100%, and a large downfall in the housing market now could give us the same opportunity in 2008. If we just change the way we think of downfalls and crashes and think of it as a giant sale, then this could be a very, very exciting time. The best investor of all time, Buffett, also said, "You should try to be fearful when others are greedy. And when others are greedy, you should be fearful." Well, I think it's obvious that people have been very greedy, especially with BlackRock and all these funds buying up real estate. Then naturally fear might be the next cycle. You can choose to be scared or do what we are doing, and we are saving up every dollar possible, saving it, and hopefully getting ready to buy as much as possible when the crash comes. It's exciting. Who knows? It could be a once in a lifetime chance. It will be interesting to see how things play out. I don't know what will happen, but I thought for this video it would be interesting, and I figured I'd make a video about it. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Please give it a like. Come on. It really helps me out. Subscribe for more content similar to this, and I will see you on the next one.